Okay. A very good afternoon to all. We have come together today to commemorate the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, one of the most illustrious alumni of Scottish Church College. It is fitting thus that this program today is being organized by the college along with the Scottish Church College Former Students Association. Perhaps it is more fitting that today's lecture is being delivered by the eminent historian and notable alumnus of the college, Dr. Purabhi Roy. Ma'am, it is an absolute honor to have you with us today. Every time I think we utter or the name of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is uttered, every Bengali feels a sense of nostalgic emotion and pride at the heroic achievements of this great dynamic man. However, over the years, in academics as well as in popular discussions, Netaji seems to be confined to the incidents that surrounds his quote unquote death. But there is much more to the political career and the political achievements of one of India's great freedom fighters. We can start with his life as a student, with his association with the Indian National Congress, his friendship with Nehru, his socialist leanings, even his relationship with Mahatma Gandhi. If all of this may be constituted as the first chapter in the great political life of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, then the second chapter definitely began with his great escape from his home at Elgin Road in Calcutta, all the way to Kabul, to Moscow, and then all the way to Berlin. Today's lecture, titled INA and the Secret Services of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, promises to shed some new light upon this part of Netaji's life. In fact, Professor Roy has promised us that she is going to provide us with some very interesting and brand new facts about Netaji's continuous effort to free his motherland, especially after and during his flight in 1941. We can't really wait, as students of history, I can't personally wait to really listen to this eminent historian. So without wasting much time, I would now like request our principal, Dr. Madhumanjari Mondal, to kindly inaugurate the program and deliver the welcome address. Ma'am.
Thank you, Srimoyi. Good afternoon. Dr. S.K. Mukherjee, Secretary of our governing body, Dr. Supratim Das, Vice Principal, Dr. Shamrat Bhattacharjee, Internal Quality Assurance Cell Coordinator, Dr. Rajyasree Ghosh, Bursar, Dr. Amitabh Rai, our Teachers Council Secretary, Mr. Sharon Dev, Working President of the former Students Association, Dr. Sadananda Bhattacharya, and Professor Shumon Chaudhuri, Joint Secretaries of former Student Association, Dr. Urpita Mukherjee, former Principal of the College, dignitaries, guests, colleagues, my dear students, Dr. Purabhi Roy, eminent historian, notable alumnus of our college, who is our guest speaker today, I welcome you all. I am really grateful and honored to welcome you, madam, for this special webinar, which has been organized to celebrate the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Bose, one of the most illustrious alumnus of our college. We are delighted today to organize such a webinar to know more about this great personality. Our alumni are always proud of their college, and their alma mater is also feels proud of her alumni. Let Almighty bless all of us today as we have gathered here to glorify his name. I'm thankful to the Former Student Association for their active participation in this regard. I hope we will be able to organize more events in the coming days to celebrate Netaji's 125th birthday. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you, Principal Ma'am, for the words of encouragement. I would also like to mention here, before we proceed further, that our Secretary of the college governing body, Dr. S.K. Mukherjee, is unable to join us, but he has conveyed his best wishes to us. Thank you, sir, for your constant encouragement for everything that the college stands for. I would now request our Principal Ma'am again to kindly felicitate our honorable speaker of the day, Dr. Purabhi Rai, with a few mementos and flowers on behalf of the college. If the audience can, I request them to unmute and applaud this special moment.
Cheers, ma'am.
Our Vice Principal, sir, is facilitating the speaker. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Before I give the mic to our Vice Principal, sir, Dr. Supratim Das, I would request the audience to kindly mute themselves during the delivery of the lecture by the speaker. If there are any questions to be asked, I request them to please kindly write them in the chat box. They would be asked to the speaker after the lecture is done. I would now like to request our Vice Principal, sir, Dr. Supratim Das, to kindly address the audience and introduce the speaker. Sir.
Thank you, Srimoy. Really, it's my special privilege to introduce our speaker, Professor Purabhi Roy, to the audience here and all the viewers who are on the digital platform now. Because we really proudly cherish a very long association of the college with Professor Purabhi Roy, who not only happens to be an alumnus of the college, but whenever required, who extended all kinds of help, support, and particularly guidance, very affectionate guidance to the college. Now, Dr. Purabhi Roy had done her PhD from Moscow University, Soviet Union. She taught at the Department of International Relations of Jadavpur University, Kolkata for more than 2 decades and was a visiting professor of Moscow State University and St. Petersburg University, Russian Federation. She specialized in Indo-Russian relations and studied Russian archives on Subhash Chandra Bose for more than a decade. Professor Roy is in fact a leading scholar in Russian language and history. She incorporated absolutely new data in her 2011 pioneering book, The Search for Netaji, New Findings, a product of interdisciplinary scholarship. This book gives a series of startling records that shed a new light on Subhash Chandra Bose. Professor Purabhi Roy pursued the mystery of Subhash Chandra Bose's death for 2 decades, and
parts of the world, especially the Gadarites, they also came and assembled Bhagwan Singh, the leader. So with the help of these revolutionaries, with the exchange of their ideas and all, he started to find some solution how to liberate his motherland. And later on, it was found, he started contacting all the people of Southeast Asia who are from India and all the revolutionary minded people in Southeast Asia. They don't have to join the fight. They don't have to join the war, but they should give a full support. Keeping in mind and view, Rashbihari started traveling through the Southeast Asian countries. And there he started coming in contact with many Indians and like-minded people of these revolutionaries who started giving him support. And slowly, slowly, a small unit started coming up in Thailand, in Malaya, in Malaysia, and all these small countries in the Southeast Asia, which he named Indian Independence League. In short, we call it IIL. In the meantime, Japan was showing the power, and she wanted to grab those lands where the countries were occupied by the British. So Japan was winning one after the other under the leadership of Tojo. And Tojo is bringing back many the armies, the POW, the prisoner of wars. Initially, these prisoners of wars are Indians. They were named as a British Indian, but after joining Indian Independence League, Rashbihari named them Indian National Army, INA or Azad Hind Fauj. So that way, Azad Hind Fauj started getting more numbers. So one way the Indian Independence League, the civilians are helping, the other way the Indian National Army was helping. So this way, slowly, slowly, the Indian National Army grew up and it came as a new voice of Asia. Asia raised her so one after the other, the meetings were going on and in the Southeast Asia. And lastly, the last meeting took place in Bangkok, where Rashbihari decided that some leadership is needed. Though Mohan Singh, who came from the army, wanted to lead it, but there were a lot of confusion. There are a lot of confusions and people started, some sort of dispute started there. And slowly, slowly, what he built up, he found that it is going to break up. As a result, in the last meeting in Bangkok, Rashbihari decided that let us call Subhash Chandra Bose to lead this Indian National Army, Azad Hind Force. Subhash was called, Subhash agreed, and Rashbihari called him up. This is a very interesting place that in Bangkok, in a radio telephone, Rashbihari had a long discussion, which I got it from the American archive, that Rashbihari was talking to Subhash. Subhash that time was in Germany, and he agreed immediately and said that I'm looking forward to this invitation and I'm ready to serve and I can come. Mediator was General Inouye. General Inouye was a mediator from the Japan side. He used to look after the European side of Axis power in Germany and Italy there. So he took the initiative and said that let him come. And she made him, arranged everything. And that time, Germany, when Subhash went to Germany, the Germans were very, very suspicious about him. The day he arrived in Berlin airport, That very day in the afternoon, the report came out that be careful of this man. He's a Soviet agent. So as a result, he was not in a very good book for the Germans. And once the Germans came to know that he has to leave for Southeast Asia, much time or much meetings didn't take place. He had been allowed to go. Subhash came and wanted to meet Tojo there, arranged the Indian National Army, but unfortunately, 1943, June, in the month of June, Subhash arrived there, but Tojo was not giving the appointment. Tojo made him wait for 20 days. And after 20 days, when everybody was restless, Subhash said, all soldiers have to wait, must have patience. Waited, and after that, Tojo met him. And when he met him, he was absolutely, totally impressed with this leader. So 40 days he had to spend in Tokyo just to meet Tojo and to arrange all these things and to talk about the Indian National Army. And while talking in the Indian National Army, in his mind, his last stroke, that is Arzi Hukumat-e Azad Hind, that the government, the provisional government of free India. Why? Tojo offered him 30 to 60,000 POW. Now with these POW, where to go? It must have a land. Otherwise it will be difficult for him to control. So when Tojo been asked to donate Andaman and Nicobar, he was not very much ready to part with his Andaman and Nicobar because it's a strategic point, Andaman and Nicobar, even today. As a result, Subhash had to make him understand that with so much of army where to go, I need to put them somewhere and I need a land. You offer something else, but I think this will be the best position to have it. After long discussion, Tojo agreed, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands being gifted to Indian National Army along with the leader Subhash Chandra Bose, and they renamed it Shaheed and Swaraj. So that was the starting point of the Indian National Army, got an independent status in the Arzi Hukumat-e Azad Hind, or the provisional government of free India. And Subhash always used to take the international politics in such a manner. He always used to study where are the countries which had this, what it calls with the POW and all, how they have made the provisional government. Provisional government was made in Ireland. Provisional government was made in Czechoslovakia. A provisional government was made in Turkey, Kemal Pasha. There are so many instances are there. So showing all these things, reading their method and all, the whole thing was started. But please see that the time was very short, very short. It is already 43. The war is running from 39. Even then, Subhash arranged all the main points to organize a provisional government of free India. What they need, population, already is there, given by Tojo, 40 to 60,000 POW and other civilians also from the Southeast Asia. So population was placed. Andaman and Nicobar, they have got it, Shaheed and Swaraj. Government immediately they started printing the money, schools, administration, everything was arranged. And it was arranged in such a nice manner. Those papers, I'm sorry to say, still now they are classified. It is so difficult that these are lying with the defense section of our government of India. Unless and until we get those papers, we won't be able to understand that how much effort Subhash gave within that short period to make it up, this provisional government. So after Arranging all these things, Subhash started his duty with the sovereignty. In a provisional government, sovereignty is a problem. You know, all the teachers are sitting here, you know, that you can make the inner state problem becomes quite clear. But when the state is going to negotiate with other international, there are certain rules and regulations are there. But Subhash tried to abide by as many rules like that so that they can get the recognition. Tojo did one thing, he never allowed the navy. Tojo never gave him the navy. And he said that, you see, you people, you don't have navy. And Japan that time was quite expert in naval expertise. So he didn't like it much to. Besides that IIL and INA together, Tojo is finding that they are becoming more powerful. Because first the civilians who have been, aroused by our Rashbihari. And of course, 23rd July, 1943, Indian Independence League was celebrated, and Indian National Army was celebrated in Singapore. And 21st October 1943, Arzi Hukumate Azad Hind was celebrated. So they were established, known all over the world, and from the platform of Cathay Hall where they were celebrating in Singapore, Subhash announced that we, the members of the Arzi Hukumate Azad Hind, we are declaring war against USA and UK. So now the provisional government moved to Rangoon and Subhash was there. But before going to the Secret Service, I would like to say, before Subhash joined that Arzi Hukumate Azad Hind, before that he was elected president in India, the Congress. And there, the whole trouble started that he gave more importance to the communist leaders and the Communist Party, and he thought that the Socialist Congress should give little space to these communist leaders, and with a joint hands they could do something. In the beginning, the Congress people, they agreed. But later on, they found that it is becoming a problem to work with the communists, all the then communists like CPI and this Forward Bloc, not Forward Bloc, sorry, he made after that, and other communist parties of M.N. Roy and others, there were conflicts started between them. Then Subhash, what he did, he thought that let me make another platform where these communists can assemble and we can exchange our ideas and we can go together for this Congress. Somehow or other, the rightist Congress, they couldn't accept it. And as a result, there are a lot of confusion started. Then Subhash organized in 1939 the Forward Bloc. And with that, with the help of Forward Bloc, he started his other activities. Then he found that in the international panorama, it will be difficult for him to stay back in India and to control this sort of confusion. So he decided to leave for abroad, especially for Germany and Russia. And that was the time in 1942, Subhash left for abroad. Now, who are the people helped him? They are all communists. Communist means that Achat Singh Chena, he was the closest person of Stalin and was known as Larkin. His name was Larkin in the communist world of Soviet people. And Larkin was close to Ajay Ghosh. Larkin was close to all, Akbar Mia was close to all the old communists, that time communists of India. So Larkin had a very good connection. It was Larkin who arranged with the help of our communist leaders to take him out from the Elgin Road house. I'm sorry to say that this portion, knowing fully well, I don't want to criticize anybody, the family members, they never came out with the fact that it was the role of the Communist Party, and with their help only, he could come out from Elgin Road house. It is still, there is some sort of mystery, some sort of secret, and they don't want to make it very, the family kept it is in a private way, as if the private people, privately he has been taken out. If you go to see, 7 days before, Sharad Bose took away all the members of the house of Elgin Road to Rishla. They had a summer house there, Sharad Villa. There he took them out, nobody was there. And Sharad Bose was consulting with a Japanese consul, Okazuka, and he was arranging this whole Calcutta business. And when Subhash left in the house for last 7 days, not a single member, including the servants and other people, nobody was there. It was only with Ajay Ghosh, all the Communist Party reports are giving, the Ajay Ghosh and Akbar Mia, Niranjan Talib, these names are found there. Anyway, that was the story how he left India and then how he reached this Southeast Asia, became the leader of it and started his work. But any great this revolutionary movement, they always have some sort of intelligence services, and intelligence services should be perfect. Look at the time, such a small time, and with that small time, that intelligence service, the secret service worked. So, when, with the help of the communist Achat Singh Chena, whose name was Larkin, I was telling, this Larkin arranged our Bhagat Ram Talwar, who was a person, multilingual person. He used to speak all those languages on the border side, who was supposed to accompany Subhash to cross the border. 1941, Subhash crossed, accompanied by Bhagat Ram Talwar of Pitti Kisan Party, crossed the northwestern front border of India and reached Kabul. Before they left, Subhash arranged a very high-powered link in Delhi, and the code name was Mary. And that Mary used to have connection with the communists of those places, and Mary used to have relation with other channels also, which I'm going to show now later. Mary was situated in 16 Queensway Road. Today is Janpat, and 16 Queensway today is Meridian Hotel. If you go to Janpat, if you go to Meridian Hotel, you will find that no more that Mary station is available there. It has been converted into hotel, and Quincy has been converted into Janpat. Now the Kabul was named Oliver, Berlin was codenamed Tom, and Russians have regular radio contact with Mary, Tom, and Oliver. See, Subhash is staying in Kabul, and Subhash is negotiating with Axis power Germans, and Mary is sitting in this Delhi, and they are contacting. And Mary is getting all the informations from different parts of India. So is it clear there, no, Oliver? So this was the regular service Subhash was getting while he has opened his Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind. Office was in Singapore, from Rangoon to Singapore, sitting there and getting all the informations that I showed you. Now Bose's departure. Bose's departure from Kabul to Berlin via Moscow. Bhagat Talwar was codenamed Silver Moon. Russians used to call him Rom. You see, in Kabul, there were all the diplomatic emissaries were there. So one can see that the German, the Russian, and the Italian, all the embassies were running there. And while Subhash reached there, the story goes that he had to stay back because he was not getting any permission. These are all rubbish. Because this Italian ambassador used to have a Russian wife. And that Russian wife took the initiative to give the permission of the Soviet. And Rom, or Bhagat Talwar, being the member of the Communist Party, he has the full access to this Soviet embassy, where the Soviet spy used to be there in this Soviet embassy. KGB officer also was there, and his name was Zaman. He used to contact Zaman and used to give all the information to him. So from Berlin to Moscow, Bhagat Talwar was codenamed Silver Moon, and Russians used to call him Rom. This slowly it is expanding. Now, about Silver Moon, the American general is writing that the operation which took place in Southeast Asia by Silver Moon is something excellent, which even the Allied powers' deception they couldn't do. Silver Moon started his operation as a double agent with Axis and Allied, Bhagat Talwar. Whereas his total dedication was to the KGB officers, whose code name is Zaman, of Soviet embassy in Kabul. He was taking all the informations from both the side of this Axis and Allied powers and conveying it to the Soviet, that is Zaman, the KGB officer of Soviet embassy in Kabul. He is praising him like anything and telling that this type of expertise, this type of agent, hardly one can meet among the Western world. Even then, our government remained quiet not to come out with these facts. Now, the Silver Moon had regular contact with All India Revolutionary Committee, Mary, in Delhi, and his confident agent was Manmohan Nath Kaura of Communist Party of India. Manmohan Nath Kaura passed away somewhere in the late 80s. I met him quite a number of times, but that time I didn't know all these things. He was a prominent figure of the CPI office, Kaura. And Silver is this Bhagatram Talwar. He always used to meet, and you can see that how the informations are running from Mary. Mary will store the information, and then he is going to, from Mary, it will go to the other part of Kabul and then to Germany. And here we find that Inouye, I told you, who was the head of the Japanese intelligence organization in Afghanistan, received Silver Moon's military information through German sources. Japan never kept any code thing there. It was running with Germany and Afghanistan. Of course, the Second World War, Afghanistan was a strategic point. And Inouye was a head of the Japanese intelligence, as well as Major General, who used to carry out the news there. And that network, I couldn't live here, that network is something excellent. And that has been scanned, wrote by an American general, Theodosius Holt. He was a Greek who participated in Second World War and very close to MacArthur. That time he was very young. Still he is alive. Time to time he calls me up and he said that I have never seen, it's only Bengali lady can do that. Taking up this type of thing. I never expected a letter from a Bengali lady that she has taken so much interest to find out the roots and all. His book name is The Deceivers. It is proscribed in India. They don't allow. But Sharad Book House, Amar Babu, you must be knowing, many of you. Pastor Amar Babu is no more Amarda. Amarda, somehow or other, managed to one copy for me. And since then, I was working on that book. And finally, I found that it is needed to, I got the permission from the American Archival Authority to place before the public. Now you see that Bose is Southeast Asia. So here Bose is in Burma. Now how the connection? The Japanese link named Rhino, Mary to Delhi, which they're communicating to Bose. And German linked in the name of Elephant, which is coming from Tom to Burma and Burma to Tom. See the network, what he did that time. What a wonderful network he did, that Bose is sitting in Burma. Mary is giving from Delhi information through Japanese. That means what? From Delhi it is going to Japan because Inouye was there. And the name is Rhino that time, Bose's name. And when Bose is operating with the Tom and German thing, Bose's name was Elephant. And that's the way our leader worked in Southeast Asia. And time was very short. Within that short period of time, he made a remarkable thing, remarkable, absolutely. Now, Provisional Government of Free India and Indian National Army staff were always in constant touch with some underground political organizations in India. They were all the time having touch with these sort of, Subhash used to help them. And Major Swami, Bose's private secretary, was controlling the channels of communication. Swami was the closest person who used to control all. And all the people who are working in the provisional government, they suspected that Subhash has got a very good relation with India, with the Indian revolutionaries. Not only the other spies, but the revolutionaries also, because he has to liberate his motherland. at the back of his mind to liberate his motherland. Now, let us see the operation. First is the bats. Bats have the operation Assam named Marmalade, Calcutta, Owl. And these people, there are many names are there. I have put it few. Lal Khan, Abdullah Khan, Ganga Bahadur, and here is Das, Hari Singh, Kansiram. Many are there in Calcutta. But while chasing them later, it became a real hard job and it was very difficult to find them. The radio-equipped spies organized by spies by the Japanese. This was organized by the Japanese, but the operation was carried on by the Indians. One in the Assam side, they found somebody. Umesh Babu tried and Umesh found Umesh Chaudhary. But Calcutta, we tried, we didn't get much information or much reciprocation. Then the Raja, that is the Air Force in Calcutta. So all the Air Force which were coming, bombing, going, they are all from the Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind and Burma-based Subhash, and both the operators are working there. Now the next is the very interesting one is the travel. Travel was organized by Pavitra Mohan Rai. He wrote a book about this secret service of Subhash Chandra Bose, but only travel. And with him, there was father of our present, at the present moment, he is no more, Amit is no more the finance minister, Amit Mitra's father, Haridas Mitra was there. And somehow or other, another Mukherjee, Shomen Mukherjee, he left them in Puri and informed them, as they do. And they were caught in Puri, the travel agent, and the Britishers declared Haridas Mitra's death. He will be hanged. Then intervention was taken by Gandhiji. Gandhiji came all the way and intervened, and he just stopped it. Then the trotter, that is on the mouth of Kaveri River. Then the pond breaker, Kathiara Post, and then the hat trick. There are people who are working on the other side of it, where in this map you can get it, the full view. Full view is there. In a nutshell, what had happened that the German representative Zubenwiller, Japanese representative Inouye, and the Silver Moon from India and Subhash Chandra Bose. This was the circle. They used to interchange everything. These are the leaders from different blocks of the Axis power. And this is how they worked till the end of the fight. And while they said goodbye, this was, of course, the words which I got from Thaddeus Holt, that Rom, or the Bhagat Talwar, he said goodbye. And actually he said that, listen, Moscow radio. Moscow radio was announcing everything that time. And that was the last word of the parting word of all these spies or the representatives from different countries. And the whole story, how they worked, that is also there. I just omitted. If you want, I can. This is the Zaman's report. This report, I have got it with me, but it's another long story. I just didn't want to include here. But this is a top secret document with details about Ram's stay in Kabul. Started. So Ram only said goodbye to everybody and said that listen to Moscow radio. There you will get more information. Thank you. And only thing there are, if you are interested of the this Russian archives names, it is to kind of Thank you very much for your kind attention. And what to say, I mean, just I wanted to conclude this with few words that what happened to our POW of INA. We never thought of it because the quote historians after the independence, they never bothered about them. But what happened to them? All out of 80 POW, casualties were 20,000. Then 60,000 were returning. Then what happened to them? Where are they? You know, I discovered actually Atal Ji gave me some private papers of the PMO office, Prime Minister's office. He said that few files are there which I can part and you can go through it. Really, they're so precious files. I'm writing now. I will add that, but I just would like to conclude with that these POW, they are all Indian National Army. They have been boarded the ship from Singapore. There are 3 ships. One went to Chittagong, one went to Madras, the other went to Calcutta, came to Calcutta. Now, Chittagong, I went there, tried to find out. No, nothing is there because of the East Pakistan that had been taken to West Pakistan by sea route. So there's no information. But what happened in the Barakpur, Calcutta? These POW here, around 20,000 around were there in the Nilganj area. They were stayed for about 2 weeks. They were very badly treated. And then the British officer is giving the notice that there will be 3 trains will go from this Barakpur without touching the major stations like Shelda or Howrah. They are not going to touch. They will go crossing Hali Shahar, will go straight to Burdwan, Burdwan to Dhanbad, Dhanbad to Asansol, Asansol to Dhanbad, Dhanbad to Mughal Sarai, Mughal Sarai to Lucknow, from Lucknow to Lahore, and all 30,000 will be put in Multan, behind the bar. So if they have been put in the Multan jail of Pakistan, so what happened? What was their destiny? Twice I tried to get this visa for Pakistan. They never allowed me. And you won't get any information even from the government of India. So the Shaheed or whatever you say fought for us. We don't know today. Thank you.
Thank you
Over
so
to you,
much.
Srimoyee.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. It was absolutely fascinating. And we are all waiting for your book to be published, I must say. I mean, we have, what I feel as a student of history is that we tend to look at various aspects of Netaji, but some of these very interesting, what should I say, elements of his life, when the way that he fled, the path that he took, and how an entire elaborate mechanism worked to help him in that particular pursuit. It was really fascinating. I hope the students who have joined us today are much enriched by the knowledge that you have shared. And you ended on a very sad note regarding the POWs, and I guess history has a lot of human tragedies associated to it, especially us being a part of a rather long colonial history. But yes, it does sadden your heart when you think of men who gave up everything for our future, I guess. But even as as social scientists, we fail to give them some justice. The floor is now open for questions, and I had requested the audience to kindly post their questions in the chat box. One question has already come. Dr. Roy, if you're ready, can I read it out to you?
Yes.
Okay. The question is from Abhigu Thakuta, and he asks, we know of Netaji's deep spiritual leanings, but while carrying out his military campaign, did he believe less in morality and more in the principle that means justify the ends? Over to you, Dr. Roy.
Once more, would you mind to repeat?
Yes, absolutely. We know of Netaji's deep spiritual leanings, but while carrying out his military campaign, did he believe less in morality and more in the principle that means justify the ends?
It will be, now it will be difficult to answer here, because we need some more informations, more papers, and some more archival documents which will give the authenticity to answer in this seminar.
There is another question. This is from Ornesh Mondol. He's asking, he's going back to the whole question of Netaji's death. But there is one particular question that he did post where he asked, I have asked you, in fact, that what did General Kalashnikov told you about Netaji? If you would you be able to answer? Can you hear me, ma'am? Am I audible?
Audible, but not very clear. Not very clear, you know.
Just repeat the question.
Achha. The question comes from Ornish Mondol. What did General Kalashnikov told you about Netaji? If you can share it with us. What did General Kalashnikov told you about Netaji? I will please request the audience members to keep themselves on mute. The speaker is finding it hard to hear. Please mute yourselves.
Not getting there, you know.
Please repeat the question, Srimoyee.
Yes, I'm repeating the question once more. The question is, what did General Kalashnikov told you about Netaji?
When he met you,
Oh, acha,
told
Kalashnikov.
about
It is the
Netaji.
Kalashnikov.
Right, right. Could you elaborate?
Sorry, dear, because
No, no, it's okay, ma'am.
no, Kalashnikov, I thought the Kalashnikov bomb.
No, I understand. The means are not perfect.
Kolesnikov.
Koleshnikov. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Kolesnikov. That's where I was not sorry. Very sorry.
No,
Sorry.
no, ma'am. My apologies.
You see, Kolesnikov was my colleague in the Institute of Oriental Studies, Academy of Sciences, where I did my PhD. 1 minute. শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না? Kolesnikov, Alexander Kolesnikov, he was the specialist of Turkey, and he was my colleague and friend also. And when he came to know that I'm doing this research, Kolesnikov was at the same time was Major General of Warsaw Pact. As a result, he had the right to go through the military papers. So he helped me going to the military archives, defense archive, and getting a lot of informations there. Recently, there is a documentary was done on not only on Kolesnikov, on the Russian angle of this, where Kolesnikov personally appeared and gave lot of informations. So I will try to give to our alumni association if they can arrange one day to show that one. And then they will be getting a lot of information. We used to have interchange, even say in January also, we talked over the phone. He is in St. Petersburg and he constantly, he gives all the information, and he is very worried that why the government of India and government of Russia, they are not coming to a common point to declare and to give the details to the public.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope Mr. Anish Mondal has received his answer. We don't have any more questions in the chat box. If the audience wishes to ask any question, they might raise hand and we can have a one-to-one conversation. If there would be any question from our side. Ma'am, can you hear me? There is another question. Am I audible? Shall I continue? Yes. The question comes from Shamapon Shaha, who is also a former student of this college, and I happen to know him. He asks, did you observe any change in the archival documentation of KGB files after USSR joined the Allied power?
I mean, actually change means what exactly he means. Change means, any change means what? What change he is looking for?
Shamapon, if you can unmute yourself and speak, I think that will be better.
Yeah,
The thing is,
hello.
you know, neither the Soviet scholars nor the foreigners, we were never allowed to enter KGB files. So whatever we got it, it is my only, I'm lucky enough to have it through Kolesnikov, through Alexander. And now even they have become more strict about those KGB archival documents. So they are not giving any chance to go through it.
Yes,
KGB
ma'am,
files
if
are
I
not
can,
allowed to the foreign scholars. You
yes,
have
if
to
I
go
can
through
respond to
some local
that,
scholars.
if I can respond to that, I am asking from this perspective. I was looking into IPTA files, the intelligence files on IPTA members from the West Bengal State Archives, and I was wondering, like how the perspective of intelligence service, whether it's like British intelligence service in Calcutta, their perception of the communist movement before USSR joins the Allies, like pre-42 and post-42, whether the surveillance increases or whether the communist members are already under surveillance from the the British government, for that matter. What I am trying to ask is whether the Soviets are using the Indian revolutionaries as a pawn for diplomatic games or the diplomatic maneuvers for their own internal politics. Like before USSR joins the Allies, before Germany actually attacks Soviets. I don't know if I make sense right now, but yeah, that's my question.
Thank you, Shamapan. Ma'am, did you get what he said? I think what he
Sribhai, can you make it short?
Yes, yes. I think what he meant to say is that can you perceive any change in the nature of the record keeping? I guess before USSR, yes, I think ma'am has got it.
No, no, no. They are very traditional and at the same time very secretive and at the very same time very strict about the KGB. All you can get, as I repeat again, that through some channels and through some known people who can confiscate or whatever you say, can get it. And I was lucky enough to be with the Warsaw Pact General Kolesnikov, and that's why Kolesnikov brought many more informations as well as when he brought the news that in 1946 October, Stalin with his other colleagues discussing that where we have to keep Chandra Bose, 46 October, mind you. So from there, I at least can found my doubts are, the clouds of doubts are moving and some silver lining is there.
Ma'am, since you mentioned the last point, I am going to ask the question that has been asked. I think this is the third time the question is being asked. Again from Ornish Mondor. Ma'am, do you believe that Stalin killed Netaji?
What is it?
Did Stalin kill Netaji? Did Stalin kill Netaji?
You see, Stalin, in a way, was very close to our communist leaders. He died in 1952, but before his death, 52 March he died, even 52 January, he met a lot of delegates of Communist Party of India. His closest friend was Dange, Sripad Dange. And Sripad was very close to Subhash also. There was a conversation between Stalin and Sripad that they were talking about and discussing about Subhash Chandra Bose. Dange's youngest daughter, Shailja, she lives in Moscow and a good friend of mine. So whenever I go to Moscow, I try to find out from her. She said, yes, father used to meet Stalin and they used to discuss about Subhash. I said, how do you know that? She said that after coming back from Kremlin, father used to talk to me in Moscow, that these are the conversations we had and we discussed about Subhash. So I requested Shailja that why can't you write a book? She said, you see, all my father's things have been recorded, but I am not allowed by the Soviet government to publish it or to make it public. I said, all right, you write in some other way. So she wrote a book. I'm forgetting right now the name of the book, but there lots of hints are there, lots of hints. And besides that, if you generally think that Stalin never wanted to kill him or to put him in the prison or to put him in Siberia, because he knew that a person like Subhash will be a good friend of him. And at the same time, from Subhash sending him back to India, he will add one more feather to his hat, Stalin. That because going this whole power in the hands of the British as well as to this Nehru, That is not much advisable for Stalin. I would like to tell you, because Stalin never used to speak good Russian. He never used to know good Russian. All the time he used to speak in Georgian. And his his books and all, he wrote it in Georgian. In a way, once mentioning about Nehru, he never used to call Jawaharlal Nehru. I'm sorry to say, everywhere in his autobiography, he mentioned that political prostitute. Sorry to say, sorry, with all my excuses. This was Stalin's expression. And that also, my Georgian friends, they said, why you are hunting Stalin? Stalin was very fond of Subhash, because Stalin wanted that Subhash should go back and take up the reign, which was never happened. Very sorry to mention this. I didn't want to mention it.
No, no, ma'am, but that's a historical fact. So and we should never be ashamed of that.
Out of emotion, it comes out.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it's time to wrap it up here. And I would again like to convey how much deeply honored we are to have you with us, and would like to express our gratitude. But more formally, I would now like to hand the mic over to Dr. Sadananda Bhattacharya, who is the Secretary of STC Former Students Association. Sir, can you please close the program with your vote of thanks? Thank you.
Thank you, Srimoyi. Our alumnus, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the 125th birth centenary is coming. So on this occasion, this is our inaugural lecture, we could say. And Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, who is already an icon in the heart of Indians, I think he is today further glorified by this illustrious lecture of Dr. Puravi Rai, mentioning the acumen of that great leader, how he has arranged the Secret Service for the benefit of his motherland, how he could step into his motherland. It is the misfortune of him that he is not being interested by these local leaders to come back, but somehow he wanted the best of India. So I thank, on behalf of the college and on behalf of the Former Students Association, Dr. Puravi Rai, taking the trouble to coming to this college and sitting in this auspicious hall, seminar hall, and giving this lecture, at least to make it something offline along with the online who are listening from different parts of India and maybe outside India. I thank the college authority, especially the principal, Dr. Madhu Manjari Mandal, Vice Principal, Dr. Supratim Das, our Teachers Council Secretary, Dr. Amitabh Rai, the bursar, Dr. Rajyasree Ghosh, and all the teachers present over here, and all the former students members who are here, who are listening physically and who are there outside the periphery and listening to this particular lecture in online. I thank all the staff who have helped today to organize this lecture, to make it a smooth way towards this last 1 hour. This fascinating lecture could not have taken place without the help of them. And I also help those who are at the outside of this hall and doing their definite works, so that we could make this first inauguration or the inauguration lecture a successful one. And the series of lectures will come, and we believe that after 2-3 months we maybe have the second lecture, and this will create some interest in the minds of our students and the listeners. And I believe with the help of the college authority, the Former Students Association will give their best to help the these college authorities to make everything successful. Thank you all.
Over to you, Srimoyi.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhattacharya. it has really been an excellent session, and given the fact what Calcutta went through yesterday, we are really grateful for all who have been able to join us today. Ma'am, shall we end the meeting then?
Yes, but before than that, I would like to thank you also. She is
Thank you.
our faculty in the Department of History, and we are thankful to you that you have conducted in such a way this webinar. Thank you, everyone. And let us sing our national anthem together, and that will be the end of our webinar today. जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंग, तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मागे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग विधाता,
जय हे
जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।